Divorce is stressful. Co-parenting after divorce is stressful. This may sound stupid or crazy for me to say that, but I'm going to talk in this video about two very important ways that we need to understand stress and understand how it affects us so that it doesn't derail your best efforts to parent and co-parent after separation. Stay tuned. Welcome to Wellness with John. I'm John Peters, and these are resources to help you thrive. This is a series on co-parenting after separation, and I'm making it because I've worked with thousands of parents over the last 27 years as a therapist, a coach, a mediator, an expert witness, and also I'm an author of 2 books in the niche of co-parenting after divorce. So I made this series because I want to share the nuggets that I have learned in working with people to help them co-parent effectively. And I encourage you to watch the entire series so that you can get free advice about how to cope better yourself, how to co-parent better, and how to parent your child better as well. Okay. So in this video, I want to talk about 2 angles from which we can think about stress and why each of those angles is important for you to function as well as you can, okay? So the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that we can't really talk about divorce as one thing. We have this handy word, divorce, but if I say I'm coping with my divorce or I'm going through a divorce, even though you know what I'm talking about, it doesn't really sufficiently talk about what's actually happening. And to explain that, let me point you to a research study that was done several decades ago at the beginning of when research scientists were trying to take a look at stress and understand stress and how people responded to all sorts of stress, okay? So there was a study done a few decades ago where they made a list of 43 different things that were common life events that people experience as stressful. And they asked people in the study to rank them from high to low in terms of the highest to the most low stressed events based on the 43 things that they included in the list. And it turns out that divorce was tied for first place as the most stressful life event with death of a long-term spouse and a major felony conviction and long-term incarceration, okay? So why is divorce ranked so highly? This provides an answer to us that potentially is a helpful thing to think about. And that is the divorce is really not one stressful event. Divorce is a whole bunch of adjustments that we have to make to a whole bunch of different things in our life, many of which matter to us a lot and are very challenging for us to adjust to. Okay, if you look at the different life events and the relative ranking on the stress scale, some things are challenging, but they're fairly isolated. They're isolated in time, and they don't require us to make a lot of different types of adjustments across the domains of our life. But your divorce affects you financially, it affects you physically, it affects your relationship with your children, it affects your relationship with your former partner. It can affect your social group because friends and family kind of sort each other through a divorce often. There are so many things that are affected, and each of those things requires adjustments. All right. So it's inadequate for us to talk about divorce as something we adjust to. We have to talk about the huge basket of things that is included in the thing we're referring to as divorce, because each of those elements of your life that are changing, that you have to adjust to and cope with, that you find challenging, each of those is its own animal. Okay. And this is number one reason why we need to think about this. Because if you only think about divorce in this vague way, like I'm going through divorce, what the heck am I going to do with that? What are you going to do with that? There's no real strategy to cope with a divorce. And therefore, we're powerless. We're victimized, right? We don't have a handle on it where we can feel like we can stabilize ourselves and have some sort of control over it, right? So that vague term divorce is not only inadequate, but it's unhelpful because it's going to make you more likely to see yourself as a victim and powerless, right? If we think about specific things like, I have to deal with the fact that I have less money this month compared to before because the divorce is making things tighter. Okay, now we have a specific thing. If we have a specific thing, then we can have some sort of control over it because we can think about specific strategies like, I need to make more money, or I need to juggle when I pay the bills, or whatever it is, I need to borrow some money. Specific strategies come into focus when we identify the specific adjustments that we have to make within a situation, right? So argument number one for why to think about stress is we have to identify, what am I actually dealing with here, okay? And one of the main tasks of grief and adjustment is dealing with the reality of what changes are occurring and the changes that we need to respond to in a situation, right? And that leads us to potentially being more empowered and having a handle on it and being able to find stability in the midst of the chaos of the situation. This is part of my aim in this series because, as I mentioned, I want to help you cope, and I want to help you parent well, and I want to help you deal with your child's other parent well. And we have to get specific in terms of the strategies that you're going to employ in order to do that effectively, right? And not get bowled over by it. And by the way, just a quick thing before I get to angle number 2 on thinking about stress. If you haven't watched the first video in this series, go back and watch that after you watch this one, just so that you're up to speed with the progression of how I'm moving through this series on co-parenting after divorce. And I'll put a link down below if you want to go back and watch that first video if somehow you didn't watch that one yet, okay? So, angle number 2 in thinking about stress is we have to consider the influence of stress on our thinking and on our reactions, all right? None of us perform really well interpersonally when we're up at code red, all right? Code green, we're fine. Code yellow, we're still fine. Code orange, we're still able to white knuckle it and perform okay. But once you get up to code red, you just don't perform well. And why is that? Because evolution, over hundreds of millions of years, has wired our brains so that when we're under extreme stress, our brain actually undergoes a whole bunch of changes, right? And in an evolutionary context, this makes sense because those brain changes that happen under high stress actually could help us survive an attack by a saber-toothed tiger or a giant bear or a giant shark or something, right? But the brain changes that happen under extreme stress don't help us perform well interpersonally because they change our perception, they change the tone of our thoughts, they change what we're focused on, they change the quality of how we react to things. So if you're going to physically fight off a bear, those things are going to help you. If you're going to try to have a calm, rational, productive conversation with your child's other parent about something, those brain changes are not going to help you. Those brain changes are actually going to derail the conversation. And this explains something that I noticed at the beginning of my career when I first started working with separated parents. And I didn't know what I know now, but I would see these people in my office, and by their report and by all evidence, they function well at church, at work, at home, at the mall, with their friends, with their family, right? They're functional, they're capable. But you put the two of them together and you give them a simple task, like, let's decide who's going to take Johnny to baseball practice this Tuesday or something like that. And within seconds, the argument escalates up to code red for both of them, gets totally derailed, and ends up more damaging than anything else, right? And I saw this over and over and over. You've seen this too, like a simple thing that you and your ex try to do that you could do with any other person on the planet, you two can't do together, right? And what's the main explanation for this? The main explanation is that you can do that with someone else, but you can't do it with your ex because you and your ex go up to code red, the brain changes happen, and then you basically suck at being able to communicate and collaborate at that point. right? If you were up at code red and all your friends and family and coworkers were up at code red, you would look as dysfunctional with them as you do with your ex. This is the main explanation, right? And this is not just a cognitive neuroscience curiosity for us cognitive neuroscience nerds like me. This is a practical issue that we must address because remember, as I was saying earlier in the video, divorce is the most stressful life event you'll ever experience, right? Co-parenting after divorce is arguably the most stressful thing and stressful set of challenges you will ever experience in your entire life, right? Stress puts us up at code red, right? So we need to come up with strategies to lower your stress, and we need to come up with strategies that counteract the negative effects of the brain changes that happen in your brain and your ex's brain in those moments of stress where you're going up to the high end of your stress scale. The bad news is we're all wired to have those negative brain changes under stress. The good news is I have figured out strategies that actually counteract those, and that's part of what I'm going to teach you in this series. I'm going to teach you how to recognize when your brain is working against you and how to correct for that. And even if we can't reach in and change evolution, change the wiring of our brains, if we know about the dysfunction, we can correct for it. Just like if my car always pulled to the left when I hit the brakes, even if I can't fix the brakes, if I know about it, I can steer to the right and correct and go straight down the road, right? So that's what I'm going to teach you, how to notice when your brain is working against you and how to correct for it so that you dial out that interference to help you be less stressed and cope better, but also to help you build a more civil and collaborative co-parenting relationship with your ex and to help you be a better parent to your children, right? That's part of what we're going to cover in this series, as well as advice about practical issues in terms of co-parenting and normative typical issues that parents encounter after separation, and also some parenting tips in terms of how to parent effectively, things like how to talk to your child about the separation and stuff like that. So stay tuned in this series. And if you like this video, hit the like button below, please. If you have yet to subscribe to the channel, please subscribe. If you have special topics that you want me to cover in this series or in general on my channel, please comment below because I love to get that kind of feedback. And feel free to share my videos widely. So I'll see you in the next video.